Hi everyone, so my name is Stefan Månsby. I'm the Chief Evangelist at Basefarm. And I'm really glad you could join me here for this series that I call the How to Company series. Myself, in brief, I'm a cryptologist by training and also have a minor in IT law. I've been with Basefarm for over 17 years now. I'm actually one of the Swedish co-founders, and I've been stuck at home now for the past 8+ weeks due to Corona as everyone else. I am based in Stockholm and I have 2 daughters. And in my spare time, my biggest passion is actually skateboarding. And it sort of reflects my favorite quotes: do one thing that scares you every day. And why? Well, it's very relaxing. It requires absolute focus and sort of creates mindfulness. It's an absolute sense of presence. And you always have to plan 3 steps ahead. You cannot only look at what's ahead of you. You have to think so many steps down the road, or you get really hurt. But enough about me. So the series, it's 3 parts. And the first part is called How to Be a Modern Company. Here we're going to focus on what is the actual definition of being a modern company. What does it mean? And so we'll do some deep dives into the definitions and try to identify some key features of current modern companies. I'll also share with you 4 or 5 examples of companies who are very modern, but are perhaps not known for being modern. I will not go into any technical details on how to do things or how the methodology works. It's more talking about the identifiers of what typical for a modern company. So in the next part in this series is called Creating Your Own Competitor. And here we go more into the hands-on on how to create your own competitor and how you use certain tools and what's available out there. We'll also talk about the methodologies surrounding this. It's everything from doing things the cloud way, the cloud toolings and cloud methodologies and business models, but also talk about how you work, being agile and MVPs, minimum viable products, and Kanban and safe methodology, and well, it goes on and on. So this is a bit more hands-on, a bit more, I shouldn't say technical, but a bit more hands-on. And finally, the third part, it's called Being a Market Leader. And here I'd like you to, after the second part of this series, send me in your thoughts and wishes on topics or challenges within your company or your person that you would like to discuss and would like me to take a look at and come up with suggestions on which steps you could take. So being a market leader, it could be as simple as I am the leader in my field, how do I remain here? Or I want to become the market leader and what's my gap here? And so what can you then expect from this series? First of all, this is not a sales pitch. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. No, it's not the box, it's not an offering. It's not about Basefarm. It's not about our services. It's not a sales pitch. So this is more of a, sort of relates to the open source principle. I'm personally a huge fan of this. When you write a piece of code that you think can solve something, then you share this code with people and someone out there can make it better. So they improve upon it and send it back to you. So that's why I'm sharing this. Also, you can expect to get access to some tools and get some homework, but really in the end, it's up to you how you and if you decide to use this. It's really up to you. And then why spend time on this series? Well, you may be stuck in old ways of doing things without actually realizing it or knowing it. You also, the topic of what's modern, the topic itself never becomes old. So also getting access to tools and examples that are proven, it's also valuable, and also perhaps you can get a bit of perspective. Perhaps you feel that your company or yourself are doing ways in very unmodern ways, but you come to realize perhaps you aren't that unmodern after all. So who knows? The definition of being modern. For starters, being modern is, you might call it, a moving target. No one is always modern. It's about the willingness to change. In order to be modern, you always had to be constantly changing with time and your demands from the market and your colleagues and your peers. And so it's a moving target. So you can't run one project and say, okay, now we're modern. It's like rebuilding your bathroom. Well, at that point in time, it will be modern, but over time, if you don't update it, it will become old. So it's as simple as that. So it's about you as a company, you as a person, having the right DNA and building blocks in place to be able to embrace change. So what's your change culture is rather the question here. Key traits of a modern company is you have like usually this learn it all high performance culture, and that's which fosters growth and innovation. So this means that you are likely organized so that everyone can contribute, no matter if it's your first day at the office or if you've been there for over 10 years. This means you have put a lot of trust in your employees, and that means also if anything goes wrong, it's not the employee's fault. It's you who hired him who is to blame here, because you put the wrong person in the wrong place at perhaps the wrong time. So your job as a company is to attract, identify, and retain the right people at the right place in the right point in time. You should also encourage constant learning. So when measuring your staff's performance, when was the last time you actually had an KPI or key performance indicator for how much that person or staff member has learned over the past year, or how much he or she has contributed to new products or develop customer engagement all the time, instead of just measuring things like physical attendance at the office. Another key feature of a modern company is that they have a clear purpose. And by that I mean they can articulate who they are and what they stand for. And it's easy enough so a 5-year-old can understand what you're trying to convey. So I said again, you have a clear purpose and you can articulate who you are and what you stand for. And this then is something that relates in every mission, vision, strategy, and experiment. Everything you do sort of connects back to who are we and what do we stand for. This means also that you don't have to have so many rules in place for your employees or even your partners or candidates, because it's obvious. It's like a family. We know who we are and this is what we stand for. It's super important. It's one of the absolute foundations to getting there. Another thing that sort of signifies a modern company is the fact that use technology as a catalyst for change. So being modern and being tech savvy and using the latest and greatest boxes is two very different things. So how the technology works and your need to understand that part is not so important. However, it's very important that you have the capability to realize the potential new technologies can bring you and your customers or your colleagues for that matter. So to exemplify, this cloud thing is going on for many years now. So if you haven't hopped on the wagon for the past 5 years and changed your delivery models and how you work and consume data resources for the past 5 years, then you're definitely off track when it comes to defining yourself as being modern. And also, if, for instance, this corona that has struck us all, if it took you more than 24 hours to make the change of transitioning your staff to working from their home office, if that took more than a day or two, you really there is a lot of room for improvement. Of course, if your job is very physical and your delivery is physical, then of course doing it from the home office is not relevant. Another key trait of a modern company is the fact that they realize that execution trumps everything. So what do I mean by this? Well, everyone in your team are able to execute. It's more important than being able to theoretically figure stuff out. So you need to own and have the capability to execute. Otherwise, nothing ever gets done. So the more versatile people are and the more dynamic the teams are working on things together, and they have the proven ability to execute their ideas, that's the key. That's the most important role. So this also requires a less hierarchical setup and organization, a bit more flat organization when everyone contributes and it's clear who contributes what. So you need this culture in place that promotes execution and the willingness to try. So your job is to provide your employees with the tools that allows them to easily and cheaply test and try out new things. And doing things the cloud way is a good example, and we'll get back to this one a bit more in depth in the second part of the series. To over-exemplify things here, let's say you wanted to put together a basketball team, you have never played basketball, but you decided to do it the old-fashioned strategy, planning, theory first. Then you will end up with something like this, where on paper you figure out that in order to hit the ball or dunk the ball in the hoop, you need to have the 45 degrees is the perfect angle at all times versus energy loss versus the constant of gravity. And you come to realization that the perfect way to play basketball is in a vacuum, because then you don't have to account for winds. And we cannot play basketball in vacuum because everyone would die. So we're not going to play basketball. To contradict this, let's say the other team decide to do this. They just get on the field, some grabs a basketball and try to shoot for the hoop, and they miss. And someone else tries it and he hits it a bit better. And then early on you realize, oh, the taller guys here have a benefit. Let's hire tall people to do this. Let's build a team of tall people. That's obvious. That's something it's hard to figure out in theory. Yeah, so this is how it starts. And I bet you the team who has just tried on to play basketball in the field, instead of get stuck in theory and realize that you cannot play at all, it's easy to just try something and encourage just trying something out for fun and see what happens. Another thing that's a key feature of a modern company is that every team has the capability to experiment rapidly with new products and business models, and they own it. That means that they start out with they have an idea on Monday. On Friday, they have tested it out in a small format, and I gotten this response from the audience or the market or the colleagues that, well, this is something doable. This is something that we should try further. And that means that the team then should remain the same and add on people instead of doing it the old-fashioned way where you hand off the idea to someone else. Because if you have your bulk of the idea is in one core team and then you hand it off to someone outside of the team in, say, marketing or in sales, you're going to figure out the business model for this in new and great, fantastic product. Things will be missed out. Things will thin out. So it becomes the whisper game. And in the end, nothing of the core values remain. It becomes complicated. So the key thing that modern companies do is that they have smaller teams that they add on people as you go along. and everyone is able to execute on this. So in the end, the perfect loop is actually the core teams, the one who developed, who had the initial idea. They're the ones also launching and standing on stage promoting the offering because they fully understand it. So disconnecting product and business development should not be done. Also the technical, so it should be physically and logically one team. That's significant for how modern companies operate. So speaking of business models, this is a topic commonly known as kill your darlings. Let's say you have a plan, you have an existing product, and now you have decided to make a new version of this. Let's call this product A. So you invested heavily, you have put together a business plan, and you have a prediction that will give you a return on investment. This has also spent quite a few weeks bouncing around the internal office, getting sign off from different bosses that yes, this prediction, I agree with the prediction, and we're gonna roll it out as planned. We know this market and this is what should be likely be happening. However, the team who made this product A, some of them decided to use some spare parts, some leftovers, and put together a light version of product A and call it product B. So you launch product A, however, product A isn't received as predicted. So the numbers aren't there. However, product B was launched by someone just posting it in the company blog saying, hey, everyone out there, can you try this and tell us what you think? And product B is actually positively received. It gets good traction and people want more of product B. Now what usually happens is that the product owner for product A gets upset with product B because he gets upset with now it's internal competition, and the owner for product A now calls the boss of product B and tells them to back off or kill the product B. Of course, what should be happening here is that the realization that, well, the market wants product B, so we'll focus on that one instead. We'll put A on hold, or we'll just kill it. And this is how it should be done nowadays, not over-investing too early on. You should make your investments on usage. You should design your solutions and offerings so you can leverage, in this case, cloud business models, where you can pay as you consume and your customers doesn't have to overpay initially for something that is costly due to low volumes. So that's key. And also you need to be able to terminate product A without any overhead. So you should be able to kill it overnight and the cost should just disappear. Other things that are significant for modern companies, they know how to be resourceful, how to get the most out of everyone. And one key thing here is also to have ruthless prioritization. And I'm going to mention Basefarm here for once, the only time here, because we are very good at prioritizing things. And we do this by being a niche provider, a niche player. In the end, we're a managed hosting provider, and there are thousands who has that denomination. They call themselves being managed service provider, hosted service provider. What our niche is, we only manage mission critical services for our customers. That differentiates us, and that is a way of doing ruthless prioritization. That means that we will say no and turn down opportunities that are too broad, because we are on the perception no one can be an expert at everything. You say jack of all trades, master of none. We prefer to be a master of something. So we realized early on we're going to be focused on our niche and we will stick there. So we have had several rather heated board meetings, discussions where things have physically flown in the room because of this. But in the end, that's what makes us unique, and that's what makes us a player tomorrow. So just using ourselves as an example. And how do you manage this then? Well, the focus for a manager here is to identify constraints and primarily, of course, not creating constraints. So you as a manager, your role is not to have any input or rather say in your products in that sense. You should coach your peers and colleagues on your experiences. However, your focus should make sure there is time and the right people at that point in time, and there is money available to make the right investment at the right point in time. That's your job. That should be your sole focus here. So, and this sort of connects back to the knowing who you are, have a clear purpose, and knowing what you stand for as a company. And now for some examples of companies who are very modern, but perhaps not associated with being very modern. We'll start off with a company called Rai. Rai is a company for outdoor enthusiasts, is how they describe themselves. And they make or create gear or products, clothing, tents, everything for outdoors people. What they do here is that their mission is to equip both customers and employees for the outdoors. It's as simple as that. That's who they are in one simple sentence. And Ray says that its employees gives life to their purpose because their employees are passionate about the outdoors life. So they get the opportunity to create the products themselves want to use. And that's super key for them and their success in this area. And also, every employee gets what they call a challenge grant. So they can win equipment and similar by posting suggestions for new outdoor adventures. That could be a challenge that perhaps they want their customers to do with their gear and post Instagram tags with this, or they want to create the gears needed to take on that kind of outdoor challenge. So it's a really interesting way of doing things. Also, one thing, when they have their meetings with the board or the management, it's run like a regular town hall style setting. Prior to the meeting, anyone can anonymously mail questions to the management. So in order to help management to understand what's going on in a company. Another example is Warby Parker. They make and sell prescription glasses online. They've been doing it for the past 10 years and rather successfully so. Their model is simple on the surface. You get your prescription at your optician and then you buy the glasses from them. And this way, and you get it directly to you. So you sort of cut out the middleman so they can keep the prices low, but they can invest in the style instead. So it's a basic way of doing things. However, they push for what they call as they refer to as culture crushes. And that means that they focus on that the team should have a positive culture at the forefront. So setting up fun lunches and events and programs. So what they do here is that a key thing is that there's always an event around the corner for everyone to look forward to. There's constantly some kind of event going on around the corner. And they also do another thing very basic. They insist on that everyone helps to keep common areas nice and fresh. And they also send out regularly colleagues to random lunches with each other. So it's these small things that makes them feel togetherness and helping each other out. Another example is Adobe. Adobe is let's call it giant, but they're very much more modern than you perhaps perceive them to be on the surface. One thing, Adobe's product portfolio is I can humbly call it creative. It's creative focus. So of course they hire creative people. So what they do is that they do everything they can to avoid micromanaging things. So let's say the managers aren't necessarily skilled in the tools themselves. That leads it up to the users and the workers there. It's up to them to sort of figure out what's the next step for our product development. And they want to do it as liberal as possible. And one thing they also do then here is they don't have any rating systems to establish their employees' capabilities. Instead, the manager takes on of a role as being their coaches, and they let the employees set their own goals, and the employee, him or herself, decides how they should be assessed. Also, they have continual training of their staff, and the culture promotes taking risks without the fear of penalty. Something that they realize that many people come from other companies, and they have to unlearn the fear of doing things wrong, unlearn the fear of trying. So I think that's a very refreshing approach for such a large company. Another company that's perhaps definitely not well known for being modern is Chevron, the human energy company, as they proclaim themselves to be. It's as simple as they have an absolute focus on their colleagues' well-being. It's all about their well-being and their safety. And that's what they call or refer to as doing things the Chevron way. It's all about your well-being. So every site has a health and fitness center on site, or they use local health clubs, and they always offer massages, personal training, and they also insist that employees take regular breaks. So it's all about your well-being as an individual and making sure that you are feeling seen every day, that you have been seen and heard, and you are doing well, and your physics and your health is good. That's their focus. And another example is Zappos, Zappos.com. They're known for selling shoes online, and they design their own shoes and sell online. This has, however, been evolved into something bigger. So now they also design other accessories and clothing and clotheslines. So it's growing. But what they do to make sure that this works is that when they do the first interview with a new employee candidate, what they do is that they make sure that they are a good cultural fit for the company. And the cultural fit value represents half the weight in the candidate's qualification. So even if you're a Nobel winning scientist, it doesn't matter. You still have to sort of win the cultural fit part. But also, if you get hired, and if you during your first week of training and you realize that this job isn't for me, I misunderstood or whatever happened, there is a bonus. You get offered $2,000 to quit, because that way it sort of mitigates the risk of someone not being really content with this, ending up in the inner circle and start sort of polluting the culture. So it's better to remove the financial risk of someone just signing up for something, and they sort of get a honesty bonus of $2,000 before it has gone too far and it becomes costly for everyone involved to sort of for the do-over. So of course, one thing they also do is that in order to get a raise, it's very clear. What you need to do is that you can pass a skill test and you can exhibit increased capability. That's the only way for you to get the raise. And it's very fair. So it doesn't matter who you know at the office, or if you're married to someone, or other nepotic angles. It doesn't matter. The only thing that will give you a raise is the fact that you can exhibit increased capability and that you pass some increased skill tests. So it's very, very refreshing. So those were the examples, and moving on, some recommended reading here. I recommend that you read Eric Rice, The Startup Way, how modern companies use entrepreneurship management. It's a very interesting read. I highly recommend it. So you have the link in here. Also, to summarize thing, a short takeaway, or this is perhaps hard to read on the screen, but I'll read it for you. So, some summaries of the typical modern company. Dedicate your team with the task of coming up with events and programs to promote community. Great company culture doesn't happen on its own. Your company culture doesn't have to be ping pong tables and free beer. Simply providing employees with a sense of safety and well-being and creating a policy where everyone looks out for each other can easily suffice. Hire according to culture fit first and foremost. This forces, air quotes, you to define what your company culture is, and fitting it into that culture is the most important thing that managers are looking for when they hire someone. This promotes the culture and happy employees, which ultimately leads to happy customers. When your employees are completely immersed in the same interest as your company, the culture propels itself forward almost on its own. Culture that is owned and propelled by the same people puts value in their voices. And putting trust in your employees goes a long way towards positive company culture, because trust leads to independent employees who help you grow as a company. So that was it for the first one, and as a short reminder for part 2, it will be held on June the 16th, that's a Tuesday. And this is where we go deep diving into some more methodologies and also some of the tooling. So we're talking much more about digital transformation, the cloud model of doing things, MVPs, minimal private products. Hopefully I see you there. And I do appreciate feedback and input on this one. So here's my complete contact. You can either write on the email or you can use your phone and just take a QR code, grab on that one, and you have my full contact information. So thank you so much for taking the time and being with me. Bye for now.